I think the biggest challenge that we're going to have moving forward is this constant change that we're at.
We had rate increases and we had a bond downgrading. The critical effort is to say, okay, we're going to acknowledge those issues, we're going to own up to them, we're going to take full responsibility, and then we're going to chart a different course moving forward.
The tremendous efforts that they've gone through are going to come back to the membership in cost control, cost containment, more efficiency.
Control and wholesale power costs gives us the ability to keep rates stable at the retail end.
Legacy coal plants, large investments, and competing with a very low cost energy market in SPP and MISO, that's continuously a challenge. On the DGC side, of course, commodities are always a challenge.
You bring this giant fertilizer plant online, you can't snap your fingers and that, hey, it's going to be running perfectly.
A lot of effort has been made there to make DGC efficient and hopefully get it in the black.
N7 partnership, I think, is one of the greatest steps moving forward.
I think it gives Dakota Gas and the fertilizer operation a bigger footprint.
They're going to get market access, they're going to have better product to market because of the multiple plants scenario.
We grow that partnership. I see just better things coming from that arrangement with N7.
Things are changing tremendously, and so I think we just have to be prepared as an organization, as a group. We need to be prepared to meet our members' needs in this new world as we go forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to moderate this panel, which is Optimizing Operations. We've got three distinguished panelists here with us today. Starting from my right to left, John Jacobs, the Senior Vice President of Operations. David Sauer, he's the Senior VP and Chief Operating Officer of Dakota Gasification Company. And Ken Rudder, Director of DGC Basin Portfolio Management. How we're going to do this today is each panelist is going to give you a 5-minute summary. We'll do that, and then we'll go on to a Q&A session. I'll kind of start that off with a few questions of my own, and then we'll turn that over to the group here to ask any questions that you may have. There are microphones located out through the audience area. If you are able to get to a microphone, please do so. If not, please raise your hand and somebody will bring a microphone to you. So we will begin with our short presentation, starting with John, move on to Dave, and then finish up with Ken Rudder.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon. When we think about optimizing operations, most people would look to what we've done in the past year to positively influence the value of our operating assets for the benefit of our members. Such activities would include our major outages, since that's where the major expenses are incurred, both in capital and in our maintenance expenses. And we have to look at how successful were these major outages planned, executed, and completed. For the year 2018, those efforts were completed at the Leland Oil Station Unit 2, Laramie River Station 1 and 2, and numerous smaller outages among our distributed generation fleet. We also ask ourselves, were these dollars spent wisely? And typically, through a 3-year cycle after that outage is when that proof is bared out. Did we do the things we needed to do to meet the members' needs? All this is important, but we're constantly having not only to consider the challenges of today, but we must also incorporate the needs and requirements of our future operations. Are we safely and economically maintaining the current fleet? While incorporating the changes being made to that fleet, such as the SCR, SNCR, or selective catalytic reduction, or selective non-catalytic reduction projects that are being done at our Laramie River Station, which will allow us to comply with new nitrogen oxide regulations. We're also incorporating the new dry ash system at the Lee Oil Station to comply with new water impoundment rules, all while absorbing the operation and maintenance of an ever-expanding transmission infrastructure as the construction phase comes to completion. If these challenges weren't enough to handle, bundle them with the pressure from an energy market in which would be challenging to remain competitive in, has forced us to rethink what we've done traditionally and what is appropriate course moving forward. Some of those activities include, for our future for our coal plants, is the Integrated Test Center at our Dry Fork Station. It is a partnership with the state of Wyoming, Tri-State G&T, NRECA, and is an effort to reimagine CO2. This project has virtually completed construction phase, and the first tenants who competed in the X Prize competition should begin to arriving on site next spring. They represent 5 different countries with a diverse emphasis on possible products which will change CO2 into a marketable product versus a perceived pollutant. It'll be interesting to see how this project bears out over the next few years. As with DGC, the Basin operations side of our business fully embraced the reduction in force program. As we currently stand today, we're operating and maintaining our assets with 116 less employees, equivalent to 11.6% reduction in our staff. And going into this, we had to ask ourselves 2 questions. Is this level of staffing sustainable moving forward? And I'd have to say yes. It'll be challenging, but yes. Or were we overstaffed to begin with? And my answer would be no. Both these statements kind of contradict each other, but what has changed was our interest into an energy market that changed the paradigm, how we think about what is important to us and what defines our successful operation moving forward versus the past. To compete, our facilities have to be able to produce low-cost energy that will mean rethinking our outage and normal maintenance practices. Questions such as, does availability and capacity factor have the same value it once had? Is buying from the market better at certain times of year or even certain times of day? Are there opportunities where we can better utilize our employees and ultimately our fleet? These are all questions we asked ourselves going into this reduction in force. Some of the changes that we've either implemented or are looking at doing, we're leveraging the talents of the North Dakota coal plant staff by utilizing a transfer mechanism which allows each facility to supply support as the workload demands shift over the course of the year. We moved our remote operations group from the marketing area to the Deer Creek station. Through reduction in force, this allowed us to operate the same assets with 7 less employees. We are looking at moving our union contract negotiations to a 1-year versus multi-year contract so we can better control our labor costs in the near term. As alluded to previously, the future has added challenges for the operations and maintenance department. We're also adding new systems to the aging fleet, as I discussed earlier, as well as incorporating new substations, which now stand at a total of 80, which range in the age of 54 years old to brand new. Our transmission system has added 353 miles of line for a total approaching 2,500 miles. We added 73 telecommunications sites, now totaling 200. With all this, we're also taking on the challenges brought about with compliance to an ever-increasing list of SIP and NERC regulations, that being the Critical Infrastructure Protection and North American Electric Reliability Corporation. Both of these entities, whose major goal is an ongoing reliability of the electric grid in the United States. To be successful, we've also looked at moving our staffing levels as we restructured in our organizational charts, incorporating duties into other staff responsibilities, and we'll be relying more and more on internal support than we ever have before. All which requires us to work more efficiently, but never at the risk of a lesser standard of safety. Another tool in our tool chest, as was talked about by Paul this morning, was alluded to, is as we've done in the past, we've relied more and more on our vendor suppliers that have been there for us day in and day out. One, if not the best example of this, has been the continual support and cost-cutting measures that the North American Coal and Coteau Freedom Mine. What they've been able to do is not only controlling their costs, but innovative in drastically cutting costs has been outstanding. Their efforts have allowed us to realize a savings of $16.8 million in 2018 and an estimated $14 million year after year over the 10-year forecast. This savings has been accomplished through a collaborative process in which we openly shared the collective challenges, which allowed us to develop innovative mine plans which support our need to be competitive in the energy market. This effort, as it always has been, is a win-win for both parties. But also, as was discussed this morning, at the end of the day, the key to our success will be our most valuable asset, which is our employees, and their ability to adapt to change and accept the challenge that our past, present, and future have tasked us with. With this short summary, I'll turn the discussion over to Dave Sauer.
Thanks, John. And as John and Paul said, Coteau has been a great partner in keeping our coal costs low. With the startup of the urea plant and continued low commodity prices in our financial forecast, we were again faced with the challenge of how can DGC be a benefit to Basin Electric and its members. Change is never easy, but it's required to compete in our ever-changing world. So we at DGC reorganized our management and support teams. We consolidated our work groups, and we expanded the span of control of our managers and supervisors. By doing this, we were able to reduce the number of managers and supervisors by more than 30%. We eliminated our plant engineering group. This was the group that took on new projects over the years, and most recently the urea project. We'll rely on Basin Electric's engineering team to lead any future projects at the Synfuels plant. We modestly reduced our operations and maintenance technician groups. We'll see some higher overtime in areas, and we will use maintenance contractors on a limited basis. But we're focused on increasing the reliability and capacity of our fertilizer assets and operating them at their fullest capacity. While on the gasification side of the business, we are going to operate at a lower capacity factor. At last year's annual meeting, we were talking about the construction group completing the construction of the urea plant. And after the first week in January, they turned the final packages over to DGC for startup. And on January 19th, we made the first urea out of the urea plant. It was quite an exciting time to see that urea fall to the barn floor. We had a good startup, but it wasn't without its challenges. We had power supply interruptions on both the main and 69 kV urea feeds. We worked with transmission system maintenance and Basin engineering to resolve those issues. We had some product screening issues, which in turn led to slower loadout during the spring season. We worked hard to optimize that system, and it's working well now. We also had some granulator pluggage issues, and what caused those issues were some leaking three-way valves within the granulator. We got those repaired, and we were able to tune that system so it's operating as it should. Throughout all these challenges, we worked hand in hand with Stamicarbon, the licensor of our urea process, a few hired consultants, as well as other industry experts. And in September, we had Stamicarbon and one of our consultants return to the plant to audit how we were operating the urea plant itself. And their response to us was, things are moving along nicely, and what we had experienced was a normal urea plant startup. They also commented on the knowledge and skill of our operators and engineers in the urea plant, so I was very proud to hear them say that. Over the past few months, the urea plant has ran well, and we've been able to operate it at 115% of its capacity. Earlier in the year, we partnered with OCI to form a 50-50 joint venture called N7, N7 markets our fertilizer products as well as DEF or diesel exhaust fluid. Ken's going to talk to you a little bit more in his presentation about N7, but I just wanted to let you know they've changed our way we viewed our DEF markets. They were able to get lower freight rates, which in turn opened up new market areas for us, and in these market areas, they require different strengths of DEF. So we're in the process of installing and starting up a mixing station at the facility so we can blend different strengths of DEF, as the original plant was designed with just a batch operation. So this flexibility will allow us to take advantage of any new opportunities that N7 finds. I guess in closing, I want to assure the membership that we'll operate the Synfuels plant in a safe, reliable, environmentally compliant manner while creating a net benefit to Basin Electric and its members. And I want you, our member owners, to know that we're committed to you to evaluate ways to cut costs, minimize expenses, increase revenues, and improve efficiencies at the Synfuels plant in the year to come. Thank you. And next up is Ken Rutter.
Thanks, Dave. Dakota Gas continues to be challenged by low commodity prices here in 2018. In this low commodity price environment, it is important for DGC to develop new and innovative ways to maximize the value of its products. So one of the things we did, as Dave just indicated, was form that new limited liability company, N7, to perform joint marketing of DGC's and OCI's fertilizer and diesel exhaust fluid products. This means now that the marketing of DGC's products is split between N7 and the internal DGC asset management team. Internally, we're still managing the purchase and sale of natural gas, CO2, tar oil, crysylic naphtha, phenol, and the remaining chemical co-products. N7, on the other hand, manages the marketing of urea, ammonia, Daxol 45, and the diesel exhaust fluid. This split has really allowed us greater focus on the different types of products that DGC produces. So who is N7? N7, as I mentioned, is this LLC formed between Dakota Gas and OCI. OCI is another fertilizer producer, a company that has production facilities in Weaver, Iowa, and Beaumont, Texas. The Iowa facility provides fertilizer products well into our service territory in Iowa and Minnesota. But moreover, OCI is a global fertilizer producer that brings a different magnitude of market operation to N7. N7 markets all the fertilizer and DEF products from OCI plants in addition to Dakota Gas. The North American fertilizer market is dominated by 3 players roughly that control 75% of the market. In order to compete more effectively, DGC joined N7 to capture some efficiencies of scale, in addition to better regional product management. Now with N7, DGC has the ability to access new markets for our products through better freight rates, new customer relationships, keep our sales closer to our facility, assistance to mitigate issues when the plant experiences outages, capture operational experience through lessons learned, and some additional administrative synergies. Thus far, with only 4 months of operation, we have seen benefits with freight, strong sales demand, and mitigation of some of the operational challenges that impacted sales. The business case suggested we would get close to $5 million of benefit annually. We now hope to get between $5 to $10 million benefit annually. As Paul mentioned this morning, a lot of that new value is expected to come from the new DEF opportunities. One of the key criteria of success for N7 is to keep the plants running year-round and keep the fertilizer products close to home. Thus far, N7 has met those goals. The graphic on the screen shows the target region for our sales. We aim to keep urea sales, for example, within 250 miles of the plant. The bulk of N7's urea sales this year so far have been within 200 miles of the plant, and some of those were done before we even started up the N7 operation. This improvement helps keep freight costs lower, which improves DGC's overall fertilizer margins. This next graphic highlights the revenues that remain managed within the DGC asset management team. As you can see, There are still more than $200 million of revenues coming from these non-fertilizer products. While fertilizer revenues and margins are expected to continue to grow and enhance DGC's bottom line, we cannot lose focus on these other products as well. One of the ways we do this is to focus on the way the products are used. If we can find new uses and new customers, it may mean new opportunities. New customers are being pursued for several products that may have potential other uses as fuels or feedstocks for different products. One of the key products managed is tar oil. Just a couple years ago, DGC was limited to one customer. We had deliveries to just one location, and we had a significant discount to a national pricing index. In 2018, we had at least 5 customers to work with. The pricing discount improved by more than $7 a barrel from recent years. We continue to seek diversity with that customer base to assist with achieving overall better margins as a result of better freight rates, and we look to different unloading terminals to help mitigate other potential freight and delivery risks. Lastly, we constantly work with the plant operations for enhancements that would allow us to move more product to market. The remaining products are also getting some new opportunities. The team has developed a new naphtha customer. We have some better delivery locations for some of the products and new uses for crylic. Staff has entered into a lease agreement for nitrogen storage with a customer at our plant site that helps with sales, but overall it can have some operational benefits for the plant as well. Finally, we are pursuing new opportunities for the ammonia plant CO2 for fracking in the Basin. There is some interest in this cleaner CO2 that has less potential to contaminate the crude oil. There have been many challenges these past couple years, and many lie ahead. But I have a staff that continues to be energized and determined to be focused on the bottom line revenue growth that must happen. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Easley, who's going to moderate the panel.
Those are great presentations. Thanks, guys. So we'll get started with some questions. And I've got a few questions that I've been thinking about for a bit. I want to ask the group, and then we'll get through some questions here, and we'll turn it over to the audience for any questions that you may have. And if we would just maybe go in the same, answer in the same order that that you guys presented in. So in talking about optimizing operations, I think it's important that we sort of do a level set and explain what exactly, what does that mean to you? So maybe, John, you can lead us off with that, kind of in a short answer. What does optimizing operations mean to you?
Well, what it's meant to me in the operations end is we're continually looking at what we did this year and then refocusing on the next year's goals. With the reduction in force, entrance into the market, takes us to look at a whole different set of parameters than we did before, and make sure that at the end of the year when we get done that we've focused on the right things, done the right things for the membership.
Okay.
Along those same lines, you know, it means getting the most you can out of the resources or people that you have. And just looking back over the past several months or the past year, as far as the optimization goes, right-sizing our workforce, you know, going through the reduction in force, looking at increasing reliabilities of our operation, as well as increasing the capacity of our fertilizer assets. And then on the other side, it's, you know, optimally running the gasification side of the business as well.
Okay.
From a marketing perspective, I think there's 2 parts to optimizing the assets. The first being trying to capture the maximum value we can from the assets by knowing what the fair value is for those assets that we should be capturing in the market and monitoring that constantly and seizing upon some of those opportunities. And the second part is using continuous improvement methods to continue to try to enhance and increase the value of those same assets that we can then turn into market value.
Okay, great. So my next question, starting off, John, you know, I think everybody's getting the message that things have changed. And could you guys each maybe spend a minute or so talking about what are you optimizing in today's world compared to what maybe you were trying to optimize to in the past?
One of the biggest challenges for the electric side of the business is with the paradigm shift is we were always taught that yours should be base load, 100% online all the time, get on as quickly as you can. With the shift now, with the ability to access the market has given us a few extra tools we can take a look at. Do we want to have the inventories that we had before? Or do we want to look at keeping our units down at a longer period of time when the market has an advantage to buy from the market versus what it was previously? All things we've gone through before. If you look back in early 80s when we overbuilt with the Antelope Valley Station, gave us kind of the same challenges, and it's a little bit of a refresh and a redo.
Okay.
Probably a couple different ways to answer, but we'll continue working on the reliability and debottlenecking on different parts of the plant. But I guess the area that we're focused on the most right now is, of course, after the reorganization of our management teams and our work groups, keeping a very close eye on our employees and making sure that we're responding to any of the things that we may have missed within that reorganization.
Okay.
You know, there are two opportunities that kind of really come to mind, you know, that we've really started to try to work to optimize more. One is with the situation in the Basin with oil prices having risen, there's more associated natural gas being produced, and that gas is going into already constrained pipelines. And so with Dakota Gasification, with their storage position, as well as their pipeline capacity, and Basin having, you know, natural gas generation assets right there in the heart of the Basin, we're really able to leverage those assets and take advantage of those low natural gas prices there. And so I think it's something that we're every day trying to balance and try to figure out how to get the most value out of all those positions combined for the membership. The other one, and I know I'm being a little redundant here, but is through the N7 operation that you know, every day that organization now is really trying to figure out with the changes that are going on with seasonal demand on fertilizers, different things with freight rates that are being renegotiated, trying to figure out where can they get the best value for Dakota Gas and the best netback margins, whether that be, you know, through the DEF product or urea, for example. But, you know, as an example then kind of diving into that is N7 kind of combining with DGC, they have roughly close to 1,000 rail cars. So they're trying to optimize the logistics for the deliveries of all the products from their plant in Iowa as well as from Dakota Gas and see how they can minimize the cost of the freight that we have versus the opportunities that are presented.
Okay, great. So it seems to me you guys have got a really good focus on what optimizing means, and clearly I think, you know, the world has changed, and I see you guys focused on, you know, reacting to those changes. I think, as all of us understand, when you're optimizing, there are trade-offs. And I guess I'd be interested to have each one of you talk a little bit about the trade-offs that you're experiencing and the balancing act that you're doing as you're trying to optimize under today's circumstances.
Well, I think one of the most obvious for the trade-off is that ability to utilize your assets in the best possible way you can. As I said, with the change in base load all the time and availability and capacity, taking a look at how we can utilize our workforce in a leaner, meaner fashion for the membership is the exciting part of it. I do a little leery on, you know, those that have been in the business for a while, look at when you trade off and you make that step and you take and you make a change, making sure you're going in the right direction, because the trade-off you have is once you make that direction, to get back to where you were, get the performance you had before, doesn't happen overnight. So as we're going into this, the same thing is happening, changing from we got to get everything online, it has to be there 100% of the time, to the realization, working with our marketing folks, taking a look at what the marketing is helping or not helping us with, the multiple assets we've got, what's the best mix, how we run them, is a big challenge moving forward. And I think that would be the biggest trade-off that we've got, is that mindset change.
On our side, probably being able to, well, I think Paul explained it well this morning, we can run the fertilizer assets with one train, actually less than one train of the gas plant. So the trade-off that we'll have is focusing the resources, time, people, and material on making sure that the fertilizer assets are operating at their fullest potential, debottlenecking that, but not overlooking things on the gasification side and trying to manage the workforce and resources around those two kind of different operating parameters.
Great. Thanks, Dave.
For us on the marketing side, I guess the trade-off is really in balancing the priorities kind of week to week and what's changing, and having staff being able to operate effectively in that dynamic environment. Market opportunities can come and go pretty quickly, and we have to be able to be fluid and respond and react to that. So for example, two things come to mind. This summer, there was a natural gas constraint in California that caused some power prices to spike for several weeks into triple-digit per megawatt hour territory. And so the team had to kind of adjust and respond and react to that fairly quickly, look for new ways to potentially find the transmission capabilities to move power to those higher value markets, and be able to seize on those opportunities. The other trade-off that we talk about a lot internally is around like the Dakota gasification side, trying to balance, there's a lot of commodity risk there, trying to balance those commodity risks versus enhancing the value of the products as well. And so this year, coming out of the winter season, we saw that the national natural gas storage position, for example, was running a deficit to last year's levels in the 5-year averages. And we kind of were watching that and continuing to monitor it to view it as a potential opportunity. And we had to balance the trade-offs associated with the risks with that and the sales and storage plan versus the opportunity. And we've recently seen natural gas prices for this winter as a result of that position increase for January and February to above $4 an MMBTU, where they had been in about $2.50, prior to the summer. So it's responding to those types of things and the trade-offs that we must balance every day.
Great. Well, keeping an eye on trade-offs is important, and you guys have got a good handle on that. I guess if there were wanted everybody in the room to know, what are the top 3 things that your opportunities that you see for optimization that you're focused on today? Just maybe the top 3, just the short list there.
Well, I think we need to utilize what we know from the markets. We've got plans we put together year after year that were based on being base load. Now we've got a really robust gas fleet. It's very challenging if we don't share openly the numbers that we have as what our generation is going to be. For instance, take our gas fleet, which is probably the biggest one is to manage, is that year to date, and the year isn't even over, we're probably in the area of about 400% over on the generation we would normally have from that fleet. So how do you balance that with your spare parts, what your maintenance needs are going to be, is one of the things we look at. Also looking at the challenge of, it's a pro and a con, is that in years past you would have employees that would probably be in their position for numerous years. And the exciting part about it is that we have opportunities that if, as you work at these facilities, that you can advance quickly. You can get involved in more things where before it might have been more of a static type relationship. And it allows many more opportunities for our employees to step up to the challenge, get involved, be more in the day-to-day than this is my duty and I know what it will be. The downside a little bit of that is they also don't get the opportunity to see everything that we had before. So it's something we have to look at moving forward, how we're going to accommodate that. We're also looking at, as I said before, is that, you know, as a past plant manager and looking at where we were at, I always wanted to have one of everything in the warehouse. And so that we could immediately put it in, we could get there. And that paradigm shift is challenging for us, that for years and years and years, that was not the case. So to back the train up, to think about it and what we're going to do, gives challenges as far as the workload that we're going to look at, what we need to focus on, and at the end of the day, be as successful as we can for the members and the people at the end of the line.
Thanks, John. Dave, can you talk about your top 3 opportunities?
You bet. I think John hit the employee side on the head. I guess the 3 would be, first is our employees. Secondly, the reliability of all operation, and then debottlenecking or streamlining our fertilizer assets. But starting first with employees, we've through the reduction in force, we did assimilate some of our maintenance employees into our operations groups. So as John talked about, the training and trying to make sure we got the right people at the right place with the right knowledge. Making sure that the management structure is in place, that with increasing your span of control, you have a supervisor that's supervising more people than they have in the past. So it's making sure that we've got people trained and understand what they need to do to make that happen. On the reliability side, this year we've probably had one of the best runs of the gasification plant. We're above our 93% capacity factor. So it's keeping that momentum going on those kind of programs and strategies moving into the future. And then starting to debottleneck the fertilizer assets. And as I mentioned earlier, on the urea side, we've actually run the front end of that plant up at 115% of its capacity. So there's a lot of opportunity for us there that you don't have to invest anything in to get that product out of the plant. So,
Ken, you want to take a shot?
Sure. Taking a step back from the day-to-day optimization, you know, as being part of the process assessment team that Paul referenced this morning, 2 of my 3 really kind of come from some of the efforts ongoing on that team. And they're related to performance measurement for both Basin's plant operations as well as Dakota Gas in terms of how you measure performance there as well. With Dakota Gas, you know, we've seen that the overall margins coming from natural gas are lower than they were in years past. And yet, you know, we're still potentially using some of the tools from the past in terms of how we benchmark the performance to the gasification capacity factor and other things. And so there's a team kind of looking at taking a step back. Is now the right time to kind of look and figure out, are there better ways to kind of set more aligned goals between marketing and operations on that. On the power plant side, I think you'll hear about it more in the next panel, but, you know, the thought is, you know, and I think John alluded to this as well, is some of those profit and loss metrics that can supplement the availability and capacity factor to try to, you know, help the plants have better metrics. The last thing I guess I would add, and this is kind of the old standby, but it's something we never can lose sight of, is communication. That to really optimize our assets, there really has to be good communication throughout the organization, and we have to continuously make sure that we're doing that. Whether it's between marketing and the operations, marketing and finance, whatever it might be, we have to always remember that, you know, to keep aligned on our goals and keep moving in the same direction, that we have to keep communicating.
Yeah, that's a great one, Ken, and everybody, thanks for your answers on that. I guess with all those things going on, lots of opportunity to optimize and some good focus, I guess I would also think it's a fair question to ask, what's keeping you up at night? What is the one thing in all this opportunity that you're working with that's your biggest concern that you're facing right now?
Well, I don't know that anything currently has changed, what I'm about to tell you, but I think where Basin has always been, it's always been the safety of the employees. Regardless, when you make a shift, it's a change. It's a change in a process that everybody may not be on board with. And people always want to achieve the goal that they've been given, and sometimes in doing that, my fear is that to be successful, people step outside their normal comfort zone to say, well, I need to get this on sooner. Production is more important than safety, and I think Basin has always been very good to say we understand that there's a process, there's things we can do and we shouldn't do, and to know the difference between that, and then ask for help when you need to. But through my entire career, that has been probably the biggest thing that I've always looked at, is getting our employees come to work healthy, enjoy the work they do, and most of all, return home in a better or the same shape that they came to work.
Yeah. Great answer. Thanks, John. Dave?
No, I don't necessarily like following John, but
he took the good one.
He's absolutely spot on as far as safety. It's safety, safety, safety. A lot of the same things, the things that keep you up at night, and the things that you telegraph to your employees. You know, you talk about, you know, we're in tough financial times. Production's key, just like John said. What are they going to do to circumvent something? I know I can do this. I've done it. You know, I've seen it done before, and then you end up with an accident or the worst of all, a fatality. But the thing that over my career that has resonated, it's a lot. You got to make sure they understand that they're the ones that are driving the bus when it comes to safety. We have a great safety culture, both process safety and personal safety, and it's okay to step back and take the time to get something on correctly, but we as managers need to be careful how we, I don't want to say reward people, but compliment people. Like, hey Mike, you did a great job, we got that thing back quick. But you don't know what I don't know what you did to get it back quick. Yeah. So you got to be very careful that you're not giving your appreciation to somebody when you really don't know what they did to get to that point, right. And it can send the wrong signal. So it's something that...
It's not just the end, it's how you get there.
Exactly.
Right.
I guess a little different direction. I would say that, you know, one of the hurdles is, you know, the pace of change. Paul spoke this morning, just all the change that Basin has undergone in the last 3 years, you know, joining the markets and the RUS buyout and a number of different things. And it seems like the world is continuing to, you know, move at a faster pace and continues to change faster and faster. And so we have to be able to, you know, respond to that, that pace of change. And how do we do that? You know, part of the strength of the co-op model has been the deliberate discussion and consideration of concepts and ideas. And how do you keep that strength in place when you're in a world that's changing, you know, as rapidly as maybe the guest speaker kind of talked about this morning, with some of those things that are going to happen and evolve over the next, you know, 5 to 10 years. And so, you know, I think one of the things that we're doing, I'll even point to the headquarters building. You know, the building was designed, you know, for better collaboration between the different functions, get us all together, be able to work together more effectively. Technology, our IST group has done a lot of things to help improve communications. Everyone, you know, in the co-op now, we have tools on our PCs and laptops. We can instant message and do a number of different things that we couldn't do even a year ago. And then, just as another example, every day we use video conferencing capabilities with the Dakota Gas plant operations to kind of keep in touch. So trying to leverage all the tools we can to stay ahead of what's going on, you know, in the world around us.
Yeah, those are great answers. And I guess I'd like to, before I kind of finish up with my question, would like to open up for any questions from the floor. It's kind of hard to see out there, so if you could, if you're at the microphone, or if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and somebody will get you a mic. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anybody. That doesn't mean this is your last opportunity. So be thinking of a question, and we're going to have one more round of questions here. But before I ask my final question, I'd like to say, as a member of Basin, for me, it really resonates, you know, the changes that have been made, how you guys have been responding to that, how people are stepping up to address that. But, you know, the safety a component of the Basin culture. I'm very happy and I'm satisfied to hear that that's not something that's changing, and that's something you guys are locked in on. I think that's really good. Then, Ken, to hear you talk about the communication aspect of the Basin culture becoming more open and sort of, you know, I mean, in business speak, eliminating silos, communicating more. I think that's all really, really great. I guess I'd be really interested, if you're able to be successful in the three things, the three biggest opportunities that you talked about, managing the trade-offs and focusing on that. What do you think the biggest thing, next year at the annual meeting, John, when you'll probably be up here again, maybe? What do you think I don't mean maybe like that. I just don't know whose turn it'll be. Maybe we'll see Tom next year up here. But seriously though, what is that accomplishment that you hope to be able to come and tell the members next year based on kind of what you've got going on and what you see happening? What are we going to see from you next year that's going to excite us, John?
Well, I think kind of the obvious thing is when you get back and we've done our planning, we've done our outages, and we come back and we've actually cut costs, we've given you a product that is affordable to the members, is something that I would like to report. I think there's also an opportunity in here on the ability, we've got many new managers that will be working within the Basin fleet because the reduction in force goes back to that opportunity thing I was talking about. Gives them an opportunity for a new face for a lot of the new managers that are out there, just as you were kind of talking about. The ability of this new workforce, new managers in the membership to connect or reconnect and build the bonds of the future that you understand when we come up to meetings like this that we are giving you everything we possibly can, which is very satisfying, that gives you a product that is of value to your members at a cost that you can afford. And that comes through all the way from our employee base being satisfied with the work, understanding what our goal is at the end of the day, and knowing that we met that. There's always going to be room for improvement. We're always going to try to improve, but the best we've hit that goal, I think that's what would be the best message a year from now.
Okay, great.
And I do plan to be here for another year.
Excellent, yeah. Dave, how about you?
I guess if we fast forward then to a year from now, it would be to say that, come back to you, and a lot of the things that we talked about in our panel discussion today come to fruition. We've had a safe year. Our reduction in force and the people that are leading the gasification plant did a good job. And looking at the fertilizer assets that we've debottlenecked some of the issues that we had, and we're actually operating it at above its design capacity rate so we can harvest some more economic value out of that resource.
Okay, great.
Some of the changes this summer were tough, and we had to take on some different responsibilities and think about doing the business a little bit differently. But more and more, seeing the energy level and the determination to make 2019, a success, on the increase, on the rise, that we really want that to happen. And as evidence of that, the process assessment team, again, one of the teams that was formed is a DGC sub-team, kind of looking at the challenges that we faced in 2018, and then looking forward to the new forecast plan for 2019, and try to do a deep dive into what happened in 2018, get the lessons learned, and apply it to mitigation plans for 2019. So I think jumping ahead a year, what I'd really like to see is that those efforts paid off, and that we were able to potentially outperform our plan and end up with better results for the membership in 2019. I think the changes at the entity are forcing us to be more innovative and creative as an organization. I think it's forcing us to pull together, tighter as a team, and hoping again with all the common goal of having 2019 be a great year.
Okay, great. So before we move on, any questions from the group? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I guess I would just like to maybe bring things to a close here. Thank the panel for their efforts. It's been quite an experience on my part, and getting a deeper dive and learning more about what's going on with optimization. And from my own personal perspective, I think hopefully you guys can feel the passion and the commitment, and not only that, but the focus that the Basin team is basically putting out in front of the members today as a representation of what they've been working on and where they're going. So I'm very confident and comfortable with where you guys are and the work that you're doing. And I just want to tell you, from our perspective, we appreciate you, what you do, how you take care of your people on behalf of myself and the membership. So good job and thanks. Thank you.